Hello, Francesca.
As a
So for this conversation, let's start out with your origin story. If you could just tell us your background, what inspired you to do the work, what is exactly your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, okay, where shall I start? Well, I guess I'll start with what my work is and then how I got here. So I am an integrative counselor, psyche spiritual guide. And what that means is I combine Western and Eastern therapeutic methodologies with ancient ancestral practices and shamanic practices and energy work. So my work is it's very much curated for every individual that I work with. And basically, I saw from growing up with two very prolific psychotherapists that I'll tell you about in a moment as parents. I saw that there was a white space in healing. And as I embarked upon my own healing journey, I found that there was, there's traditional therapy where you talk a lot and there's some really beautiful tools there for healing, but something was missing. And in spirituality, also a lot of really great tools, but also something missing. And in somatic work, a lot of really great tools and tuning into our body and understanding what our body's trying to tell us. But it was really the combination of all of those things that really supported me in my path and got me to where I am today and continues to be part of my deep inner work that I do on a regular basis, really on a daily basis. But moving into a place of understanding psychology, spirituality, somatics, and plant medicines. It started at a very young age because my parents have both been in the space in their own way for all of their careers. My father is a PhD psychotherapist who has been working with psychedelic medicine for 60 years. That's 60 years. He's
Wow.
he's in his mid 80s and going real strong. And so, I grew up in a household that had a lot, of course, of his influence. And then my mother is a double PhD psychotherapist, social worker, who really is, in addition to being a deep academic, is also quite metaphysical and has done a lot of work with varied indigenous communities throughout the course of her life. And then, of course, bringing me around them throughout the course of my life, which was also a very heavy influence on me. And then my pendulum swung really far in the other direction, away from the family business. I think we all thought I would become a therapist, and I became a corporate executive for some very large cosmetics companies. And found myself at the age of 30 sitting in a corner office in a downtown Manhattan high rise, feeling really unfulfilled, being very spiritually closeted. Nobody around me knew about my work with plant medicine. I did talk about meditation. I didn't really talk about my spiritual practices. And I felt like I was living a double life and really knew that something needed to change. And also, that was when I really started to do like the deep inner work on myself and recognizing that I had been working with various psychotropic and psychoactive medicines to do deep work in myself, and that it was time to go deeper and acknowledge the deep pain that I had been carrying for a lot of my life. And in doing so, understand that I had actually become a corporate executive as a means of a trauma response. And really to like prove that I was strong and to protect myself with this persona that I was living in every single day. And it really was a protective mechanism of me against the world. And I didn't know it. And so from there, I decided to leave that world and go back to school and study psychology, but also lean in more deeply into my shamanic education and studying various indigenous practices. I recently got back from living in the northern Amazon jungle under a Shipibo maestro studying plant medicines and ayahuasca. Um, and so I went back to school, started building my practice, and I continue my studies in these various arenas, both in traditional academia and also more in ancestral practices and shamanic work. I am going to be starting my PhD soon in somatic and spiritual psychology, and really wanting to combine all of these worlds to create a space where people can feel held and supported and learn and grow as they do their own healing work.
And so how do people find you
Yeah.
then?
Yeah, how do people find me? That's a great question. Well, things like this are quite helpful. My practice, my private practice is entirely word of mouth. I do have a website, but typically people don't find the website until after they have found me. Um, and I really am trying to build this like quite organically. I think that there is a sweet spot with organic reach and connecting with people from a place of really deep resonance. So there's no paid marketing or any of that kind of stuff. It's really about what is resonant with each person. And do they have a friend who has worked with me who then shares their story about our work together? And then they feel called to connect with me. And I support people in a myriad of different contexts. Some of it is one-on-one individual counseling and psyche-spiritual guide work. And that can be very different for every single person. It can be guided meditation, it can be somatic attunement, it can be deep internal family systems, family constellations, parts work. And it can also be in ceremonial work, guiding people through ceremonies to really take a flashlight on those like shadowy corners of the self and learn more about who we are in those spaces, and then help them integrate all of those pieces of themselves into their day-to-day life.
And it's just so many questions I'd like to ask. When people come to you, have they already like exhausted the traditional, going to a psychologist, psychiatrist, because there were a lot in the offering, that you mentioned. That was a long list, from somatic to therapy to family constellation. So going back to my original question, have people, by the time that they come to you, they must be either, they've already gone through the traditional route.
Yeah. Some people have been in years of talk therapy and they have found it's not working for them and they come to me. Some people come to me by way of their therapist. I have a lot of therapists in my network, traditional therapists who refer people to me, and then we do work together. Some people have never really done any of it. Some people have embarked upon their own healing journey on their own and are looking for some support. So it's quite different for everybody. I do have some people, with all due respect to traditional therapy, some people who simply say it's just not working for me and I need something else. I need a more holistic approach. And that's how they land in my presence, I suppose.
And then what's a typical, or if there's any typical, because you said it's like customized.
Yeah.
Do you collaborate if they have a therapist already? Do you collaborate with the therapist, or like how does it,
Occasionally I
how
do.
would the session go?
Yeah, occasionally I do. So, for example, I do have a therapist in my network who has referred somebody to me for more ceremonial work. And then we did the integration sessions together, the three of us, which was really interesting and really unique and cool. But if sometimes it's really just about, okay, like I've found Eva Cheska, my therapist maybe recommended I find someone like this. And then, my work is separate of theirs, but I also, of course, will always open myself up to connecting with the therapist, if that's necessary.
Then, and then from your, your family, your mom having like 2 PhD and you're getting your PhD as well. How do you see your professional work progressing from here? And you
Yeah.
just came back from the jungle.
I did. Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure. Every single day, I even struggle like calling it my professional work because I still have, I think, a little bit of like professional PTSD from my as an executive. That's something that like I'm working with within myself, right? And frankly, like I feel so truly honored to be able to hold space for people in their healing path and their healing journey. I call it the journey back to self. I know I didn't make that up, but that's the word. That's the phrase that I like to use, which I describe as a never ending journey of introspection and exploration and getting to know ourselves again and learning who we are again for the first time, like peeling back these layers. And I feel so honored. So, when it comes to moving forward, I'm really taking it one day at a time. I give talks and I give seminars on various topics, including plant medicine, but also on quantum time manifestation and how we use this idea of the quantum self to heal and engaging with inner parts work that way. I'm starting to teach. I'm teaching my first course actually starting next week. On May 16th, I have my first session, and I'm teaching about medicinal mushrooms to a
Ooh.
small cohort of people and how to work with them properly and how to really honor them as the sacred medicine that they are. And continuing my work with individuals and small groups and couples, and supporting them in their healing path, whether that means over Zoom like this and weekly or biweekly sessions, or it means deeper ceremonial work as well.
Can we circle back on the somatic? Because I keep hearing the word, but I just don't understand exactly when you talk about somatic healing, like what does it entail?
Yeah. So our soma is our body, right? It's this physical existence that we are in, this vessel that carries us on this plane as we walk around New York City or wherever we might be. And so somatic attunement is, I actually find, probably the most important piece of all of this work. The wisdom of the body is, I mean, it's unparalleled in my opinion. It's simply a matter of how do we learn how to listen to it. And I'll be honest, like I work hard every single day to walk my walk in terms of this, because some days I do a better job of listening to my body than others. And some days I struggle to speak its language or to understand it. But what it really means is rather than approaching healing through the mind, right? And the mind, as we know, the beautiful quote, the mind is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master, right? And so when the mind is the master and it's just like driving all of the thought processes around what we should be and what we should do and how we should heal, then we tend to lose touch with the parts of ourselves that actually can share the information around how we can heal. And our body holds every cell holds every memory, every thought, every experience that we've ever had. And so when we have something that needs to be healed, yeah, go ahead.
Explain that a little bit, because
Yeah.
I've heard that phrase before,
Yeah.
and it feels like, what do you mean? Like our body keeps the score? Like it wasn't there that book,
Yes.
which I still haven't read, which I know is like
Very
really
important book.
popular.
Very intense. I think that it should come with a trigger warning. There are some pretty intense stories in it, but it's an important book in this type of work. For sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can you like explain that even further? Like how, like explain like I'm a 12-year-old, because
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
So, okay, here's how I would explain it to a kid. When we think a thought in our head, we don't just hear it up here, because the thought doesn't just exist up here. It actually exists from head to toe, because we are experiencing that thought every single place. So when we say something, I'll take for myself, for example, part of my own personal path has been like a deep and continues to be exercise in self-love and acceptance, especially as it comes to physical self-esteem. And so there were many years where I really struggled to look in the mirror. And when I did, I wasn't really saying nice things to myself. And so I was perpetuating a story that then every part of me was hearing. And when you say something not nice to yourself, there's an automatic reaction. It's just like when someone else says something not nice to you, there's a reaction. It's kind of like a tense up or, a pull in or a contraction, right? And so that then gets stored in our body, because it's not like there's a room up here where the conversation happens. No, that information is open on the superhighway that is our nervous system that exists within us. So down to our toenails, every cell hears the thought. Every cell experiences what we experience. Every memory is there. And so then once we understand that, if we have perhaps a neck ache, right? What is our body trying to tell us? Is it that simply that we slept poorly last night? Or is it that we've been holding our shoulders up for a while? And if we've been holding our shoulders up for a while, why? Why have we been holding them there? What is it that our body's trying to say? More often than not, it's in a state of trying to protect us when we clench up that way. And so somatic attunement is without using this to learn how to listen to the messages of the body. And the way that I explain it to people is like, it's like learning a new language. You're not going to learn Italian overnight. You perhaps are going to use an app to start with one word at a time. And so with our bodies, sometimes sitting and noticing, just noticing what's coming up, just noticing, okay, I notice that there's an ache, in my right shoulder or in my neck. And I'm just going to allow myself to witness that right now. I'm not going to try to figure it out. And slowly over time, as we create space for that, then we can start to connect the dots and understand what it is that's being held there and then how to move through it.
Well, I'm realizing that now, mainly because I'm definitely older than you. Well, and I recognize it because the older I get, I'm starting to see on my face how my habits, like they call it like the resting bitch face or whatever. but I'm going, ooh, I'm starting to see like the number 11 on my forehead, and I'm going, when I wake up, that's the thing. It's like when I wake up, I see the number 11, and I'm like, does that mean that when I'm sleeping, like I'm worried? That so when you talk about like feeling it in the body, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm gonna start like even before I go to sleep, I'm gonna remind myself just to relax because I'm in bed and I'm like, get some good night's sleep and wake up like happy.
Well, anecdotally, just because I did work in cosmetics and skincare for a really long time, the 11s are also a sign of expression on our face, and emotions, and happy emotions can create, smiles create the deepest wrinkles. And so I think it is important for us as women to remember that. But I do love this idea of taking some time to relax before bed and create a sense of calm and safety within the self before you ease into sleep. So then you're releasing some tension in your face and in your body so you can have a more restful sleep and wake up that way. But I do know, it is particularly, it's so interesting our conversation's going in this direction. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like it's particularly challenging, I think, for women, having come from the cosmetics industry and now here, like our society really creates this big spotlight on how we look. And I went through the most challenging year of my life last year. It was a really severe dark night of the soul. What kind of dark night of the soul isn't severe? I don't know why I need that adjective, but it was.
It was that severe.
Yeah, it was quite severe, and it was arguably one of the most important things that's ever happened to me, and also the most challenging. And I do see how I have aged really, really significantly after that experience. And like, how can I find compassion for myself, seeing that reflection in the mirror, holding myself in that space, loving myself. And that's a little bit different than my body necessarily sending messages of there's pain stored here. That's it's adjacent in that it's the way that the stressors manifested in appearance. I do believe that at this point, I've moved through a lot of like the somatic stuff that I was holding on to in that space. So hopefully I've maybe tempered down that aging process a little bit. But it does happen. It certainly does happen. And there are so many different facets of how to engage with that kind of experience, including the somatic attunement and listening, but also the way that we hold ourselves when we are experiencing something challenging like that. And afterward,
sign me up for a course. Sign me up for a session. I want to connect with my body.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'd like for us to discuss, and then we'll go to the class for next week, is how do you see the current generation? I don't know, what generation is it now? Generation Z?
I think it's Gen Z.
Gen Z. Yeah. What I'm seeing, well, from TikTok, I don't know if it's good or bad, but what I'm seeing is like there's a lot of the younger women that are really like connected with themselves. There's a lot more awareness of how the patriarchy has influenced the way that we think about ourselves. Like I said, I'm an older generation, but I'm starting to see that the younger generation seems to be having more confidence and awareness and care and compassion to
Yeah.
themselves. I'm sad to hear when there's like suicide and like that's one extreme, but there's also this like movement that is happening that seems to be where there's, you know, self-acceptance
Yeah,
much more than it was when it was my time, my age.
certainly. I mean, yes, I think yes, and like you said, you know, like there are really painful things happening with this generation as well. I think probably social media and various other aspects of the world are probably influencing that. And also there are a lot of really great things happening. And I do think these next generations, they're just different. You know, I'm a millennial and I think I was like kind of cuspy with like this shift. And I think that what I'm seeing is that words like being trauma informed, shadow work, you know, inner reflection, understanding the self, all of these pieces of wanting to do the work and heal ourselves, like this becoming more and more commonplace. Now, I am very well aware that, you know, we are coastal people. We live here in New York. I'm originally from California. It can be like a very coastal movement. And so this does take time to reach other parts of our country or frankly, the world. And there are many Gen Zs who are leading the way here. And I'm so excited about it. I think it's really spectacular. And I will say, like, one of the things that I feel most proud of in my work, in my private practice, is that I have clients from age 22 to age 85. I literally see people in that entire spectrum. And I'm so excited that there doesn't seem to be any kind of preconceived notion that someone is too young or too old. Now, there are certain parts of the work that are too young. Obviously, I wouldn't go into any plant medicine with somebody who was had not experienced most of their own brain development. Let's just put it that way. But in other types of the work, you know, to see that they're coming to me because they are ready to look at their inner parts, they're ready to connect with their inner child, they're ready to do that kind of work and to heal so that they can be as deeply embodied and integrated as possible. It's so cool to be able to have a conversation with someone in their 20s and an hour and a half later talk to somebody in their 70s. And I feel it's such a gift to be able to see that, because you're never too young or too old to really start working on yourself.
And is it typically female or I guess that's the gender that come to you, or do you see a diverse group of people?
I do see a very diverse group of people, lots of different backgrounds. I would say that I hope that the diversity of ethnicity continues to grow. It has been growing over the past year, which I'm really excited about. But no, it's not just women. I have a great deal of clients who are men. I also have a great deal of clients from lots of different religious backgrounds, and some quite orthodox. Which is really, really exciting, because organized religion has often told us that, you know, there's only one entity that can help us or save us, and that is God. And what I'm seeing is that there is a new interpretation of what that means. And of course, what I'm seeing within my client base is that God is within all of us, and therefore they're finding it appropriate to do this kind of work, whereas maybe in the past it wouldn't have been accepted by their religion. And so I'm really, really excited to be, you know, offering more of like a non-secular approach to people who are very deep in whatever their faith may be, because at the end of the day, like, we're not all too different in our belief systems, and it's really, really beautiful to see that.
And so for the class next week on May 18th,
Yes.
what can the folks expect from the class? What's the takeaway for people?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could take this a lot of different directions, as I'm not really sure. I mean, I really kind of want to open it up to what people want to learn about this type of work. You know, we had a really beautiful Q&A last time, and I think that, like, allowing me to provide deeper education, both in the inner workspace, but also in the plant medicine arena, and, you know, be able to open up that door of exploration to the people who come to Alchemist Kitchen and create a safe space where people can ask questions about either their own journey or what they're trying to experience.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you at the class next week. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Eza. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.